Okay, can everyone hear me? If you can, just please indicate that in the chat box.
Yes, no problem.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and get started now. So please, if you haven't done so, just ensure that your microphone is muted. And once we get started and get deeper into the presentation, I will disable my camera so that you can focus more on the slides. And your cameras don't need to be on. If you want to have them off, it's up to you. But the focus of the presentation will be on the slides. So I will get started now. And we are recording the session. Okay, good afternoon. My name is Antonio McLaren. I am the National Program Leader for the 1890 Capacity Building Grants Program. And the purpose of today's session is to discuss the 2020 RFA. Typically, this is a webinar that I do or I have done just after the RFA is announced. Obviously, this year, we're a little delayed as the RFA has been out since April, and we're now getting ready to go into June. But again, the purpose of this session is to provide an in-depth description of the program, as well as answer any questions that you might have. In terms of the Q&A session, because of the fact that there might be a lot of questions, and to minimize folks talking over one another, if we could do all the Q&A, if you could just type your questions into the box when we get to that portion, and I will take each question one by one. That will be best, because that will really help me to ensure that I answer everyone's question. If you have any specific questions about maybe your idea or project that you're looking to resubmit, et cetera, that might be best handled by a phone call or an email directly with me. So what I'd like to do is, ensure that the Q&A session is really focused on perhaps general perspectives concerning the RFA. So again, anything specific to your project, it'd be best if I handle those outside of this session. So now we're going to move on to the next slide. For the Capacity Building Grants team, I am the National Program Leader. Just as an FYI, if you're not aware, I will be with the agency until the end of June. I was extended to work with NIFA until this point. As you know, the agency relocated to Kansas City. I'm still based in Washington, D.C., so I'm still supporting the agency in the meantime. But I will be moving on from the agency after June 26th. The same goes for Katrina Hanks, who is also listed as a program specialist. So she and I will both will no longer be with the agency after that time. We will have a new national program leader in place, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And at that point, when that person does join, I will work to ensure a smooth transition of the program. I am pleased to welcome Stephanie Freeman. She is a new employee, and she is the assigned program specialist to the program. She has been with the agency for about 4 or 5 months now. She's also from the 1890 system. She understands the system, and I have enjoyed getting to know her at this point. So I think that you all will be in very capable hands once we have a new program team officially in place. But for now, with respect to the RFA, I'm listed as a national program leader. Stephanie Freeman is listed as the program specialist. So for any questions concerning that RFA, please contact me or Stephanie. For those of you who have probably been, y'all might have current awards that are in process and might have been working with Katrina. Still free to contact me or Katrina for any current awards, any issues that you might be dealing with. Katrina and I will certainly be able to entertain those questions. Next slide. So I'm going to just now kind of begin by giving some introductory remarks about the RFA. The first thing that I will note is that we did receive an increase in funding for the program, which is great. So we'll have more funds available for FY 2020. We estimate we'll have around $22 million available for awards. And this is just for FY 2020. The deadline for applications is September 10th, 2020. The reason why we have a longer application cycle is really in response to the pandemic. We realize that the situation that we're currently in has put an increased strain on institutions, especially faculty and staff. And we thought that allowing for more time for applications would be best. So that's why the deadline has now been pushed to September. Obviously, that's going to push everything else. But you know, we have to work with the situation that we're in. So again, applications are due September 10th. And if there are any questions about the RFA, even after the webinar, again, you can contact me, but just realize that I will be gone in June, and then a new person hopefully will be able to answer questions after that. As a reminder, I assume everyone is aware that this program is reserved for the 1890 institutions. So 1890 institutions are the only eligible applicants. Only the lead applicant has to meet the eligibility as described in the RFA. So if you are, for example, at Langston University, you can partner with other entities that do not meet the eligibility. So if you want to partner with, for example, an 1862 or another higher education institution, a community-based organization, even international entities, you are allowed to do that. So you can partner with other entities that are outside of the realm of the eligibility. Only the lead institution has to be in 1890, and this is based on the legislation. The legislative authority. Okay, so in terms of new components to the RFA, there's not a lot new. I think the most important thing that I will mention here is that this is now a 2-year RFA. This is the first time that we have released a 2-year RFA for this program. The agency is also in the process of releasing 2-year RFAs across other grant programs, and it has already done so. So what this means is, looking at this slide, there are 2 separate deadlines for the FY 2020 and FY 2021 application cycle. And essentially, the RFA that's publicly available now already has this information up front. So for FY 2020, if you are applying for funding, you'll need to submit your applications by September 10th. For FY 2021, the same date applies. It's just the only difference is that that date will now be in 2021. So again, September 10th is the deadline in both years. We will not, as an agency, administer a new RFA for FY 2021. So the RFA document that is publicly available on the NIFA website and in grants.gov it's the same document that you will use for both cycles. We thought that this would be best given the transition of the agency to Kansas City, and now especially given where we are in terms of the public health crisis, having a 2-year RFA would be helpful. That way you do not have to wait for the new RFA to go live. So let me also specify that any application that is received after September 10th will be considered for the FY 2021 cycle, as long as that you are stating that this application is for FY 2021. If you are applying for FY 2020 funding and your application comes after the deadline, after the 5 p.m. deadline, that application would be considered late and would not be considered automatically for FY 2021. So you have to be very intentional when you are submitting an application that you are submitting it for FY 2020 and you're not submitting it for FY 2021. No major changes to the RFA document. Again, for the most part, if you look at FY 2019 and FY 2020, there were enhancements in terms of the language, some improvements, some clarification was made in certain sections, but no major changes that you really need to worry about. So the advantage is that, again, the RFA that you have before you is the same one that you will use for the next 2 cycles. I'm now going to cover RFA highlights. So these are sort of the major sections of the RFA. This is especially important for new applicants. So for first-time applicants, this is very important. For those of you who have applied for CBG before, this will just basically be a review of information that you have already heard. Okay, next slide. So the goal of the program is really in three phases. The first is to advance cultural diversity of the food and agricultural scientific and professional workforce by attracting and educating more students from underrepresented groups. The second is to strengthen linkages among the 1890 institutions, other colleges and universities, USDA, other federal agencies, and the private industry. And the third is to enhance and strengthen the quality of teaching, research, and extension programs at the 1890 institutions so that they are established partners in the U.S. food and ag sciences education system, higher education system. So those are really the 3 goals. They have not changed. These are the same goals that were in previous iterations of the RFA. Additionally, this has not changed. You're looking at the funding caps across project and grant types. These are still the same as in previous years. As you can see, if you are new, the maximum fund allocation for a project is in the integrated project type. You can submit an application for an integrated project up to a max of $600,000. Professional development is on the far right. Those have a maximum cap of $100,000. And then you can see in the middle that you have the various fund allocations for teaching, research, and extension projects across standard and collaborative grants. So for example, if you're looking to submit a teaching education project and it's a standard grant type, then the max that you could apply for would be $150,000. If it's a collaborative grant, then the max for a teaching education project would be $300,000, and so forth and so on for the others. I'm now going to go ahead and quickly describe the grant types. There are 3: standard, collaborative, and professional development. So first, the standard grant is really a grant where the institution, the lead institution applies on its own. So there are no subaward budgets attached. In other words, the institution is applying for funding to administer and lead the project without collaborating partnering institutions. Collaborative would just be really the opposite. So a collaborative grant means a proposal for a project that will involve the applicant 1890 institution and at least one or more other colleges, universities, community colleges, or other institutions. One of the things that we do mandate with collaborative grants is that the institution, the lead institution, should transfer no more than 50% of the awarded funds to the other institutions participating on the project. And again, only the applicant institution must meet the definition of an 1890 institution as specified in Part 3 of the RFA. Professional development, this is an opportunity that was implemented across the program in 2014. This was primarily implemented to address faculty and staff professional development needs. So if you are a faculty or staff at an 1890 and you are interested in seeking funds for professional development, this would be the most appropriate mechanism for you. So an example of a professional development project might be, for example, if you're looking to pursue a faculty exchange, a sabbatical, training, any type of professional development opportunity that would build institutional capacity by investing in your individual faculty or staff development, that would be an appropriate project under this grant type. And again, the maximum award for professional development grant is $100,000. The other thing I will quickly mention here, because it is an important piece and it is described in Part 3 of the RFA, is that if you are seeking professional development support, it is required that you are a U.S. citizen or national. So I just wanted to make that clear, that is a requirement. And again, that's on in the RFA, it's in Part 3, you will see that statement. Moving on to the project types, there are 4: teaching and education, research, extension, and integrated. So teaching education projects are those that are seeking to improve teaching and research training in the food, ag, natural resources, and human sciences. And this should be at the undergraduate or graduate degree levels. Research projects are those that are building institutional research capacity, and that could be for fundamental research, applied research, or even multidisciplinary research. Typically, I will mention if it is multidisciplinary, the research should include collaboration between 2 or more disciplines. So just be sure that if it's multidisciplinary, it should integrate or include 2 or more disciplines in the project. Extension projects are those that are building extension capacity at the 1890 institutions. Typically, these projects are addressing topics such as 4-H, youth development, production agriculture, leadership development, natural resources, family consumer sciences, community and economic development, which also includes entrepreneurship, as well as other topics. So extension projects, we also will support if there are projects that are addressing other extension initiatives beyond the ones I just mentioned. That is also allowable, and that is also discussed in the RFA. Then the last one is integrated. An integrated project is one that looks to integrate at least 2 of the 3 components that I just previously mentioned. So for example, perhaps you want to submit an integrated project that looks to integrate teaching with research, or maybe you want to integrate teaching with extension or research with extension, or maybe you want to integrate all 3. And that's completely appropriate for this project type. The one thing that you will need to do if you are applying for an integrated project, and this is something that is discussed in the RFA, you will need to tell us the primary project type. So for example, if it's a teaching and research project, you would have to tell us on the cover page as well as in your project summary, which component is primary. Is it teaching or is it research? Typically, the primary project type is defined as the area that will receive most of the funding. Typically, this could be up to 2/3 of the total funding for the primary area. So again, that's something that you would need to discuss with your program team, but also ensure that you specify that in your application. Okay, need areas. I'm not going to discuss them in detail, but what I will do on this slide, you will see that I've listed the need areas for you. These have not changed. These are the same need areas that have been provided in previous iterations of the RFA. So for example, for teaching, you will see that there are 6 need areas. For research, there are 2, and for extension, there are 4. So please review the RFA. All the need areas are fully described in detail in the RFA. And if there are any questions about where your project fits, that's a question that you can certainly reach out to me directly, and I can help you if you need that assistance. Okay, moving forward, these are just some points to consider. I realize that there are lots of major components of the RFA, but these are some major points that I think are important, particularly to new applicants. So the first one, leadership development, which is discussed in the RFA. Leadership development component is required for all CBG teaching and education projects. So what that means is that if you are applying for a teaching education project, you are required to provide leadership skills opportunities for students. So this could include, for example, maybe it's opportunities for mentoring and shadowing. Maybe it's organizing leadership academies, workshops, or trainings for students. Maybe this is also connecting the academic classroom experience with daily leadership roles and organizational activities, as well as other opportunities that you deem would demonstrably show that you are basically supporting the next generation of food and ag science professionals. So again, this is just required for CBG teaching and education projects. Additionally, if you are applying for an integrated project that does have teaching and education as a component, you should also try to incorporate you should try to incorporate some form of student leadership opportunities within that project, particularly if the teaching education component is the primary project type. So I just wanted to make that clear. The two most important pieces of the RFA, in my estimation, it's part 4 and part 5. Part 4 is the section of the RFA that talks about how you apply and submit your application to NIFA. So for example, it will discuss the components that are required for the project narrative. It'll also discuss the forms that are required, particularly through grants.gov. So please be sure that you review part 4 in its entirety. The same goes for part 5. Part 5 is really the evaluation criteria discussion. Please ensure that when you are submitting your application that you address all components of the evaluation criteria, which is again part 5. And I really just mentioned this, evaluation criteria is significant. The criteria is what the peer review panel will use to evaluate your application. So as long as you are addressing this section of the RFA, you stand to have the best chance of your application being competitive. Another thing that I would like to mention is that I realize that when faculty and staff are developing applications, you're typically working with your Office of Sponsored Programs. Please ensure that you and your colleagues in that office are clear on the requirements, the required forms, the required documents that are specified in the RFA, so that when the application is received, NIFA receives that application with all of the required components, as well as everything being in PDF. I have observed that in past years, there have been some instances where, for example, the Office of Sponsored Programs might forget to submit something, or there's some miscommunication between the faculty member and that Office of Sponsored Programs. And that can lead to perhaps some erroneous information being submitted to the agency. And I have seen where this has basically placed the application in an unfavorable position. There have been times when the application doesn't meet the eligibility, or doesn't meet the administrative requirements, and thus is declined from being sent to the panel because of something that took place at the time of submission. So please ensure that whoever you're working with, that all of you are aware of what's required, so that when NIFA does receive the application, it is received in its entirety. As a reminder, institutions can receive up to 10% of the CBG funds. So this is also elucidated in the RFA. Again, and each institution is limited to 10% of the pot. No more than $700,000 would be awarded in professional development grants. Again, this is also explained in the RFA. This is something, again, we've kept pretty standard across previous iterations. Okay, so this section is actually something new. I have not in previous webinars ever included this section for common submission mistakes. I thought that this would be something useful, particularly for new applicants. I'm basically on the next couple of slides, I'm going to cover some of the most common submission mistakes that we've observed for the CBG program, but this would also be applicable to many of the competitive grant programs across the agency. Okay, so on this slide, one of the things that you will see, the first bullet, eligibility. And before I continue, if you, again, please, if you're not muted, please go ahead and ensure that your microphone is muted. That way we don't have any other noise interference. First bullet, applicant eligibility. only the 1890 institution is eligible to submit applications. For CBG, what we have seen in the past is that there have been instances where the individual's, the PED's individual name is listed as the applicant institution on the SF 424. Anytime you list your individual name as the applicant, you actually put your application in danger of being declined for acceptance for review, okay? Because the program does not accept applications from individuals. It can only accept applications from the 1890 institution. Therefore, in the SF 424, please indicate that, for example, if you're at North Carolina A&T, you would need to ensure that North Carolina A&T is listed as the applicant institution. Do not put your name as the PD in the applicant institution field. That is incorrect. That will result in your application being declined for review. Similarly, when it comes to timely submission, again, this is something that has happened. The deadline for applications is 5 p.m. This is the Eastern time zone. If they are submitted at 5:01, your application is late. Your application will not be accepted for further review. If there is a situation in, for example, grants.gov, there was a technical difficulties that happened through grants.gov that prevented your application from being submitted on time. Please follow the steps to ensure that, and these steps are on the RFA, please follow the steps to ensure that a record has been filed with grants.gov. Call up grants.gov immediately, get a ticket number through grants.gov, then contact NIFA. Don't contact NIFA first. Contact grants.gov, get a ticket number that documents the issue, then using that information, reach out to the agency, and then from that point, the program staff will be able to move forward to research the issue, and we'll go through our internal process to do that. For the budget request limitation, if you are submitting a project, for example, if you're submitting a standard teaching and education project, the max is $150,000. If you cannot submit that application for $300,000, if you do, that puts your application in danger of being rejected because you have exceeded the project cap for that particular grant application. So ensure that the project cap is consistent with the RFA. There's some more common mistakes. These have all happened with CBG. PDF requirement. You must ensure that every document that is in the application is in PDF. Do not submit an application that has a Word document. Don't submit an application that has an Excel document, okay? If you have those types of documents, you have to convert those into PDF first before routing an application to NIFA. There are no exceptions. There have been instances where applications are submitted on time and everything is fine. However, there are some documents that are in Word. And what happens is that those documents that are in Word format are not loaded into our internal system. And when that happens, unfortunately, those documents will not be included for review. Page length requirements. Please ensure that your application follows the page length, margin, and font size requirements as dictated in the RFA. And then lastly, program-specific documents, please ensure that you follow the guidance. If a document is required, that means it must be in the application. If it is optional, that means it does not have to be in the application. I'll give you an example. The logic model. The logic model is required for integrated projects. It is optional for all other types of projects, okay? The integrated project application must include a logic model. However, it is only recommended for other project and grant types. So that's an example. But again, just ensure that you have all the required information. If something is optional, that will not be used against you negatively in the evaluation of your application. So I just wanted to make that clear as well. Okay, I'm getting close to the end. Other information that might be of interest to you is that you can always register for grants.gov notifications by going to grants.gov and using the CFDA number. For example, for CBG, that number is 10.216. Once you sign up for notifications, then you will receive notifications of when the RFA is released, as well as you will receive notifications if there are updates to the RFA. If you want other CFDA numbers for other programs, you will need to find those on the NIFA website. Additionally, if you're interested in other funding opportunities, you can certainly research those on our website. There is on our homepage, you'll see an option for grants. You just click on that, and you'll be able to use the filters to search grant opportunities based upon keywords, as well as based on eligibility. So you can also filter out all opportunities where only 1890 land-grant institutions are eligible. So feel free to peruse our website for additional funding opportunities. And then my last slide is contact information for me and for Stephanie. Again, if you need anything beyond this webinar with respect to the RFA, reach out to us directly, particularly if your inquiry is specific to your project or maybe your resubmitted project. And our phone numbers and emails are listed there for you. And that's all I have. So at this time, what we will do is, again, we're going to move to the Q&A session. I will use the remaining time for questions and answers. Please use the chat box to put in your questions. I will answer each question one by one. And again, if there's anything specific that is really generic to your program, call me or email me either today, or we can set up another time to discuss.
Thank you.
Are there any questions? Okay, so go to the chat box. Okay, there was a question early on in the presentation about sharing the slides. I can certainly do that. The question, if a collaborative grant involves another 1890 institution as well as another non-1890 institution, does the 50% share still apply? For example, could there be a 33% among the, okay. So essentially, good question. The RFA mandates that no more than 50% should be shared in terms of collaborative grants. So if you want to have a situation in which you are sharing based on those percentages, then that would be fine. Let me see. Give me 1 second. In terms of where you will find that information, if you go to part 2 of the RFA, you will see a full description of collaborative grants. And in that description, you will see that the applicant institution will transfer no more than 1/2 of the awarded funds to the other institutions participating in the project. So it's really a cap on the sharing. You don't have to share 50%. In other words, it's you have up to that amount to share. But if you want to share less, then you can certainly do that. But you shouldn't share more than 50%. Next question, if we have 2 subject areas from each institution for a proposal, do you consider it as a standard grant or a collaborative grant? RFA says that standard grant focuses on a single subject or discipline. Okay, so really, a collaborative grant, it doesn't have anything to do with the disciplines. Collaborative grants are grants in which you are working with other institutions. So that's really a different situation altogether. I think what you're probably referring to is a grant that is looking at a multidisciplinary approach. But for a collaborative grant to be collaborative, your institution needs to be working with another institution. That's what makes it a collaborative grant.
Could
Next
that
is-
be a private institution, not an 80/90?
That is correct. That is correct.
But then, I'm sorry, but then do you consider that as a standard grant, even though there are multiple disciplines within the same 1890 institution?
A standard, okay, I think the disciplines, the standard grant is in terms of the definition, is a grant in which you are a single institution working to lead the grant without any other institutions collaborating. So that's what makes a grant standard. A collaborative grant, a collaborative grant is, I'm sorry?
Yeah, go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, a collaborative grant is basically the opposite. It just basically means you're working with other institutions. So that's really the difference.
Yeah.
So the emphasis,
but the instruction clearly says that the standard grant focuses on single subject area. And here we are talking about at least 2 subject areas. So how does this type of grant go into? Is it a standard or collaborative? I mean, I understand it doesn't fit in the collaborative because we are not collaborating with other institutions.
So the disciplines don't have anything to do with a grant being standard or collaborative in this sense.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So if you are an institution applying for a standard grant and you have five disciplines, for example, it's still standard. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. 2 questions. Tuition for graduate students is allowed under the CBG grant, and purchase of vehicles allowed for research and extension. Okay. For number 1, we do allow for CBG to support students via scholarships. So if you want to provide support for students through CBG for scholarships, then you can certainly do that. The same would go for assistantships for graduate students. For purchasing of vehicles, this is this depends. Passenger vehicles, I would say the justification would need to be very strong. Typically, the passenger vehicles are frowned upon. If you're looking to apply for support for vehicles for for the research farm, for example, or to support a mobile laboratory or mobile kitchen, that's allowable. But again, you know, this should really link back to the purpose of the grant, as well as the goals of the RFA. But again, if it's a passenger vehicle, if you're just looking to get a vehicle to transport you and your team to different sites, typically requests like that are frowned upon. Additionally, you know, in many cases, the institution does have formula funding that they receive that they can use formula funds for this purpose. So again, if you're looking at vehicles, this should really be specific to the grant. Next question is: Is SMART grant as reliable as grants.gov when submitting application packets? SMART grant. I'm not sure, Dr. Martin, what you mean by SMART grant. If you want to provide some clarification, please do so, and that way I can assist you on that question. Next question: is there eligibility requirements for foreign collaborators? Okay, again, the eligibility is only specific to the applicant institution. So as long as the applicant institution meets the eligibility, then you are okay. There is no citizenship requirement for faculty or staff that want to be a PD or a co-PD on a grant. So, and that's in part 3 of the RFA. Next question: are the extension codes specific to FNH sciences only? Let's see. There is a code for under extension for if you're looking at the discipline codes, then the answer is yes. There are 7 extension discipline codes that are really specific to food, agriculture, natural resources, and human sciences. However, if you're looking at the need areas, then the answer is that there is a need area for other extension initiatives that will allow you to look at applications that will address other extension priorities that are outside of those described in the RFA. Okay, question: one PI can submit 2 different grants in 2 different categories, example given, one in teaching and another one in research? The answer is yes. That is allowable. Faculty and staff can submit multiple applications. Question: can we apply CBG for both years? You can. However, there is a statement in the RFA that does say that faculty who are PDs are limited to being a PD on 2 active CBG grants. So if you have 2 CBG grants and you're looking to apply for another one, then one of those 2 should be expiring in the same fiscal year that you're looking to apply. Question: there's a question about: is there a possibility of linking non-US institutions seeking collaboration with willing partners within the eligible institutions? Yes, as an applicant institution, if you are, for example, at FAMU and you want to work with institutions in Brazil, that's allowable. For example, if you're looking to establish study abroad projects or international education projects for faculty and students, and you need to work with institutions in Brazil, Costa Rica, Belize, et cetera, you can do that. Question: is the capacity building related to the institution or to the beneficiaries? I got a review that said project does not build the capacity of the farmers. The capacity building program is essentially should be building capacity for the institution. However, with your proposed project, there should be evidence that your program is looking to build the capacity of your target audience. So if your project is, for example, if you're looking to enhance farmers' knowledge in farmer viability or profitability, if you're looking to train farmers, then there should be, in your application, some evidence that shows how your project will do that. Whether it's like, for example, workshops or distance learning or technical assistance, et cetera, et cetera. So there should be some evidence in your project proposal on how it would do that. Question, is purchase of major equipment allowable? Yes, however, that equipment should be justified in the application. Question, is any specific inclusion of COVID-19 related projects to be added this year's submission? While not specified in the RFA, if there is a topic that is COVID-19 related but still links back to a need area discipline as specified in the RFA, then that would be allowable. Question, is a private company considered as a partnering institution? Yes, you can partner with industry, you can partner with nonprofits, as well as other entities. Question, can you apply for both professional development and a regular grant in the same year? Yes, that is allowable. Question, can we have ARS as a collaborator? Yes, you can have ARS, USDA ARS on the grant. However, they should not be ARS, since it is a federal entity, should not be receiving federal funds from the grant. They should be perhaps receiving, if they're going to be receiving like for small amounts of funds for materials and supplies, then that would be allowable. But they should not be receiving federal funds for salary because they're already federal employees. Therefore, they should not be drawing salary from the grant. Question, please address the calculation of IDC and the limitation of 30% or the institution's approved rates. Patricia, I think you and I can discuss that offline. That is specified in the RFA. There are also some resources on the NIFA website that does provide information on how to calculate the IDC rate. So we can talk offline, and I can also provide you some other information. Question, for integrated research teaching projects with research as primary, is leadership development, is it optional? Yes. If the teaching component is not primary, then leadership development would not be required. Thank you, Katrina, for providing definition of standard grants. Question from Maurice. Will the webinar be available to review for participants later? Yes, we are recording the webinar, and we will provide a link to the recording once it's available. Okay, question, can CBG funding be used to support scholarships or other financial support for international students? I'll need to check that, Dr. Whitaker. I think there is some requirements in terms of citizenship that they need to be citizens to request to receive scholarships. However, they do not have to be citizens if they are being hired to work on the grant if they are international students. I will, so that is my perspective at right now. What I can do is I will provide that information to you as well as to all the 1890s by email, so everyone is aware. Question, engineering disciplines are not included in the discipline codes. Does this mean that investigators from engineering departments are prohibited from leading a collaborative proposal submission? If you are engineering, you would need to identify how that links back to the RFA, as well as you would also need to, all applications for CBG have to have an institutional letter signed by the dean, and that's also specified in the RFA. So if you are from an engineering department, please route your desire to apply to the program through your respective College of Ag or whichever office or college at the institution typically applies for CBG grants. I realize that not all 1890 institutions have a quote unquote College of Agriculture. There are some exceptions. So you will need to work with the dean on that campus that does provide leadership, if you will, for the food and ag science disciplines at your campus. But we certainly do not preclude, we don't preclude engineering from being included. I mean, that's, if you know, there are other disciplines, for example, that might be related to food and ag sciences, and that will be allowable.
So could I ask just a quick follow-up question on that? So
Sure.
So for example, I'm in chemical engineering.
And you're looking to,
etc. So as the lead on the proposal, would I need to then have a letter from the dean of the College of Agricultural Science or the dean of College of Engineering, or both?
the dean for per the RFA, it would be for from the College of Ag.
Okay.
Yeah, College of Ag or you know, whatever corresponding college that is. That will be the person that will need to submit that letter.
Got it.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. Question. My understanding is that the need area of an integrated project should be the primary project type. Am I correct? It's not the need area that should be the primary, it's the component. So for integrated project, you need to identify the primary component, and then that primary component would then correspond to, it should correspond to the need area that you're looking to address as part of the RFA. So for example, if you are applying for a teaching and research project, then, and teaching is primary, then there should be a primary need area for teaching that you're addressing. Okay, question, is an equipment request in a research proposal considered to be building the capacity of the home institution? I would say that it could be. It should not be the entire nature of your request, because this is not an equipment grants program. So if you are applying for a research grant and it includes research that requires equipment, then that equipment request should be attached, you know, should be included as a part of that proposal, but it should not be the emphasis, since this is not an equipment grants program. I will also say, just as, since I'm on the topic, that there is a new equipment grants program that NIFA just implemented, and the applications are being submitted as we speak. So if you are interested in an equipment grants program, then go to that program. But if you'd like to include an equipment request as a part of your research proposal, then that will be allowable for CBG. Okay, the follow-up from Dr. Martin. Smart Grant is a program used by our office to sponsor programs. When we upload packets, it is simultaneously uploaded to grants.gov. Okay, Dr. Martin, I again, since this is something I guess it's used by your local institution, I don't really have, I guess, knowledge to understand how the mechanics work for smart grants. What I'm familiar with is Workspace, that all institutions are using Workspace to submit grants.gov applications. So that's the most I could say. If you'd like to speak with me offline, feel free to reach out to me. We can talk further. There was a question about, will CBG fund 100% extension projects? Yes, it funds 100% extension projects. It does fund 100% teaching as well as 100% research. The question, is there a limit on how many ARS collaborators can receive? Is there a limit on how much ARS collaborators can receive for supplies? It's not specified in the RFA, but the allocation should be minor. So if you're looking to provide funds to ARS for supplies, this should not be a major, in terms of the ratio, it shouldn't be a major proportion of your budget. If you have an idea of how much you're looking to provide to ARS, you can certainly contact me offline. But there's not a limitation per se based on the RFA. But again, those expenses should be minor versus your other budget lines. Question, should we need to sever associations with international organizations as a board member or fellow to avoid conflicts of interest with the grant proposal? That is possible, yes. If you are, that could be a conflict of interest. And Sankar, if you want to talk to me about that offline, please reach out to me and we can certainly discuss that. It would probably depend on when your board membership is looking to expire, as well as maybe other aspects of your board membership, but we can certainly talk about that offline. Question, is ARS allowed to take a student research associate to work on the project and pay their salary? If I understand the question correctly, I think you're asking if, as long as ARS pays for, pays a salary for the student or research associate, then would that be allowable for that person to be included along with the grant? Yes, that would be an allowable component, if I understand the question correctly. If I don't,
Yes.
if I don't, okay.
Yeah.
So that's fine.
Okay.
Besides collaboration, can any consultant be funded through this grant? Example given, statistical service, software analysis, data management, pathologist, etc. I would, well, yes, as long as the consultation is justified per the RFA. There needs to be a, for example, a letter from that consultancy, from the authorized representative, it needs to be included, and that consultation just needs to be properly justified as being necessary for the grant. But in terms of other, external consultation that's needed, that will be allowable just as long as it's properly justified.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Question, bearing unforeseen circumstances, can support letter be sent about a week after the deadline to the MPL? No. The reason why is because any application materials must be received in the application. So this has happened in the past where I'll get a support letter after the deadline. I'm not allowed to integrate that letter into the application process. September 10th is the deadline for application materials. So you need to have those support letters submitted as a part of that application, if they're known at that time. Question, what does capacity word include? Capacity, so with respect to this program, there are really three major areas of capacity building that this program provides. That would be teaching, research, and extension capacity. For example, capacity for teaching could be in improving an institution's capacity to deliver food and ag sciences academic programs. Are you looking to improve curricula? Are you looking to advance faculty and staff instructional methodology? Are you looking to advance research capacity for your faculty by providing them opportunities to obtain training or to obtain new laboratory skills and methodologies? So capacity means basically to the extent that the institution can pursue or extend programs for, in future years. Because the other thing is that with your project, there should be a demonstration in terms of how the institution will support the project after the federal funding ends. So, what extent will, for example, FAMU support this project after the project, after the federal funding for that project has ended? To what extent will the institution be committed to being able to carry out the capacity so that future farmers, future students, or future community members can be supported? Thank you, Katrina, for providing information about the equipment grant program. Question, since a PI can submit more than one grant application, can that PI win more than one at the same time? The answer is no. The PI is limited to one award. However, a PI can receive a professional development grant and a standard grant in the same cycle. But a PI cannot receive an award for two standard grants, for example, in the same cycle.
Just a clarification, is that just as a PI or is that in any capacity? So could you be a PI, a PD on one grant and a co-PD on another grant?
Yeah, it's just for PI. So there's no limit on co-PDs.
Okay.
Okay. Question, can I allocate money in the CBG grant budget to hire a graduate student from other HBCU institution? Yes, as long as you can justify how doing so would advance or contribute to capacity building at the home institution. Question, where do you find COVID-19 related info on CBG grant? So as I stated earlier, COVID-19 related information was not included in the RFA. If you do have an idea for a COVID-19 related project and you'd like to understand if it fits the RFA, contact me directly and I can provide you some guidance one-on-one. Next question, can a dual purpose can a dual purpose with a dual benefit research project be submitted to CBG, for example, developing an agricultural animal model for disease investigation? That's fine. If you've identified a research area in which it serves dual purposes, and you want to submit that to capacity building grants, as long as it meets the goals and addresses one of the need areas in the RFA, then that's okay. Question: in light of COVID-19, can supplies such as masks, cleaning supplies, hand sanitizers, and similar other items be included in the CBD budget? Yes. Again, as long as those expenses are specifically specified in the proposal that they are for COVID-19, and that still supports the scope of the project in terms of the RFA, then that's okay. That will be allowable. Question: where can we get access to this webinar recording? I will send out a link to the recording once it is available. I'll send it to the 1890 deans, extension administrators, and research directors, and then they will in turn send it out to their faculty and staff. Question: can we allocate budget for private companies for the collaboration? If you want to, yes. So if you're looking to, it sounds like you're looking to subaward to a private company because they're collaborating with you on the grant. That is allowable. Question: my proposal got rejected with one of these comments related to collaboration, mentioning that my main collaborators were from the same department. Is there a requirement to have collaborators from other departments or institutions that values the proposal? Okay, I have received some other questions about collaboration. If you are from Virginia State University, for example, and you are in the College of Agriculture and you're looking to work with the College of Business and the College of Mass Communications, that is not a collaborative grant. A collaborative grant is a grant in which you at Virginia State University are working with another institution, such as Virginia Tech University, such as Cornell University, Iowa State. If you are at an institution working with other departments at your institution and you submit that application, that is a standard grant because you are a single institution applying for funding, okay? A collaborative grant is only those in which you are incorporating collaboration from at least one or more entities outside of your institution. Okay, question.
Can two professors or two researchers from two institutions can be co-PI?
So if I understand, if you are at one institution and you want to have a co-PI from the same institution.
No, from another institution.
From another institution, yes. Yes, that's okay.
And the salary and everything can be covered.
Correct.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Question: are ag automation related projects specifically solicited in this RFA, or is there another funding source where ag automation projects are specifically encouraged? Ag automation is not specific to this RFA. Dr. Buckner, if you want to talk to me, let's talk offline. It sounds like you have a specific idea for a project in ag automation. I think that as long as, you know, this could be perhaps maybe a related area. Maybe maybe it's ag engineering, maybe it's agricultural mechanics. And if it does address the RFA, then that will be fine. But if you have some specific questions around that topic, let's talk offline and we can certainly address that. Question, is it required, preferred to have include more than one researcher at home institution? Is it required or preferred to have? Well, it's it's not necessarily required or preferred. However, if you are applying for a grant and you are applying as a lone researcher, depending on the context of the grant, that might make sense in terms of the context. I think this is a case-by-case basis. I can't really provide you any information beyond that. I have seen instances in the peer review process where the project team, where the personnel, that component is perhaps it doesn't demonstrate that they can lead the project, either because the expertise is not represented adequately, or maybe the percentage of time commitment is not being demonstrated. So it just depends. Because, for example, if you're applying for a professional development grant, then it would make sense for you to be the only person on that project, because the professional development would be for you. And then in other cases for standard grants, it might make sense if you are the PD. Maybe you don't have a co-PI, but perhaps you have a host of consultants. Maybe you have a host of other persons that are not necessarily senior or key personnel. At the same time, I think that you would just have to ensure that that it is justified in the narrative in terms of that type of approach. And then the other thing I would ask you to consider is look at abstracts of funded projects that we have on our website. Also look at projects that you currently have at your home institution to identify what would be the best strategy for your specific case.
So can I add, Dr. Antonio?
Sure.
So it's a collaborative grant. It's a research collaborative grant, and I do have collaborators that fit into the project. But do you really require, if I'm the only one person from the home institution, is that okay? Because I have other collaborators from different institutions.
Yes, then that's okay. I mean, so if you are the only person from your institution and you're working with other institutions and
Yes.
you have co-PIs,
Yes.
that's fine.
Okay. So it's not required to have a second person from the home institution.
It's not required.
Okay, thank you.
Question, can a co-PI come from a non-1890 institution? Yes. Only the applicant institution needs to meet the eligibility. If you're collaborating with a non-1890 institution, such as Cornell University, that's okay. And that person can be, the person from Cornell can be a co-PI. Question, can permanent resident apply for the professional development grant? Again, if you go to part 3, first page of part 3 does refer to the requirement. I will, so verbatim in the RFA, United States citizenship is required for faculty who serve as a PD on a professional development project. So that's verbatim from the RFA. Permanent residency would not apply for that, would not correspond to that. Question, can a conference grant be submitted to CBG? And in that case, how would it fit? We do not have a conference grant type in CBG. However, if you're looking to apply for a conference grant, probably the best mechanism where that might fit could be a standard grant under the standard grant option. And you can use that to cover the scope of the conference proposal. Okay, thank you, Katrina, for providing the link for abstract to funded projects. Again, this is I would especially recommend this for new faculty who have never applied for a CBG grant in previous cycles. Please look at abstract to funded projects. Please get an understanding of the types of projects that we funded, the scope, as well as topics. Because, for example, if you are applying for a project from Alabama A&M for a topic that was already previously supported, it would be good if you knew that ahead of time. That way, from a system-wide perspective, at the agency level, we can continue to support projects that are investigating perhaps new or emerging topics. Nothing precluding an institution from applying for a topic that's already been funded. However, we also want to ensure that we are advancing innovation and novelty across the 1890 system. So again, getting an understanding of what's been funded is a good idea, just as you would do a literature review for understanding the type of literature that's been released for a certain topic. I would take that approach for understanding what's been funded for CBG. I think I've addressed everything. Just got a new question. Can this accommodate experimental work? Yes. Give me. I might need more context in terms of what you are inferring by experimental. We do fund research projects. If there are topics that fall outside of the realm, or perhaps new topics or emerging topics, they would need to perhaps be vetted by me, and I can give you some guidance. I'll give you an example. There have been some questions concerning industrial hemp. We do have an industrial hemp resource page on the NIFA website. If you are interested in pursuing grants around industrial hemp. So if that is the case, I would investigate that resource page on the NIFA website. And then if you have a specific idea around industrial hemp, feel free to forward that to me or call me up and we can discuss that in detail. Katrina, if you're still on the line, if you could provide that hyperlink to the industrial hemp guidance on the NIFA website, that would be great, so that folks could see that. Otherwise, what I will do is I will also include that in my follow-up email to everyone. Any other questions? I'm not seeing anything in the chat.
Can you hear me, Dr. Antonio?
Yes.
Dr. McLaren, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, I was trying to put this question on behalf of Dr. Patricia Lynch and myself. So Dr. Lynch, who's submitting the proposal, from the human, two departments. Like she's going to be submitting the proposal from the Family and Consumer Science as a PI, and Agriculture Department, as myself as the co-PI. The goals are the same. The priorities are that NIFA's purposes, 3 mentions to advance the cultural diversity, strength linkages among 1890 institutions, because it's going to be a collaborative with other 1890 institutions, and also it's going to center the quality of teaching. So the areas are going to be on the food, it's going to be more on the nutrition and family and consumer science related topics, diet, human health. Then from environmental science, it's going to be strengthening the teaching and bringing youth development, other aspects which are mentioned in the priority. All these aspects will be covered, but under the College of Agriculture, 2 departments from 1 university will be submitting this proposal as a collaborative with 2 other 1890 institutions. So
Okay.
is there any conflict or anything, like 2 departments, but the approach is same, but the 2 departments are going to strengthen teaching in each of these 2 departments.
Okay, so is your question, Dr. Shriran, in terms of the, in terms of your approach? Are you asking if your approach is allowable?
Internal approach. It is an internal approach. A pre-proposal has been written, which is approved. So now, since Dr. Lynch is going to be the first time submitting the proposal, in order to clear this understanding of the 2 departments, presenting their own curriculum and student development, faculty development, and youth development by bringing the high school students for recruitment, all these efforts will be done together by 2 departments. Only
Yeah, that's fine.
That is the 2 departments under the college, under the umbrella of College of Agriculture.
Yeah, that's fine. That's the approach is fine. I don't see any issues with it. The way you have articulated the approach is fine. No concerns.
Okay, thank you very much. Because the similar approach will be taken by the Delaware State University, because we have the similar departments with similar approach, same mission, and teaching is common. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's fine. It's fine.
Okay,
And if you want to talk more, we can talk more offline. But everything you said is fine.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. McLaren.
No problem. I saw a new question, 2 collaborators from 2 different federal government agencies, including ARS. So, so the situation with federal agencies, if you're looking to work with federal agencies, that is okay. However, those entities should not be drawing any salary from the grant. Okay, we can't pay federal agencies for work with federal funds because they're already being paid through the federal government. So no issue there. Just be sure that you have the required documentation from those offices. There is information in the RFA that does discuss, for example, letters of commitment from the authorized representative of those entities. So those need to be in the application.
I have another question. Yeah, Dr. McLaren, sorry.
Yes.
Ms. Stephanie Freeman, she's going to continue in as a program specialist, or she will be moving to Kansas?
Okay, Dr. Freeman was newly hired as a program specialist earlier this year. She is based in Kansas City.
Oh, she's already based in Kansas City. Okay.
Correct. Yes. Okay, next question. What happens if a PI wants to submit more than one grant and the home institution has limits? How should this be addressed? Okay, so per the RFA, every 1890 institution has a limitation of 15 grant applications. So that would include 12 standard and collaborative grants, as well as 3 professional development. So as long as the sum does not exceed 15, then NIFA does not have any involvement in terms of, who among the 15 is submitting 1 or 2. So that would have to be really discussed at your home institution. You would have to work with your dean on that particular piece. All that we are going to do at the agency level is ensure that no more than 15 applications are being submitted in one cycle. Okay. On page 17 of the RFA, you will see a line that says faculty may submit multiple standard and/or collaborative grant applications as the lead PD to the CBG program in FY 2020 and FY 2021. Additionally, there is no limit on the number of applications for which faculty may be listed as co-PD or key personnel, okay? So that is on page 17 of the RFA near the bottom. Please review that language. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Okay, there's additional, I see that there's a question about green card holder, professor to be the PD. Again, there's, on page 17 of the RFA, you'll see a statement: United States citizenship is not required for faculty who serve as PD or co-PD or key personnel on a standard or collaborative grant. United States citizenship is required for faculty who serve as PD on a professional development project. So again, page 17 of the RFA has that information. Please review that information in detail. Okay. Give me 1 second. Okay. Okay, I see a question. Could you share any stats regarding the number of submitted proposals and/or acceptance rate, et cetera? Yes. So typically we receive over 200 applications in one cycle. In terms of the funded rate, typically it's between 25 to 30%, which is actually very good for NIFA. Most acceptance rates are much lower. For AFRI, for example, it's between 8 and 13%. So for CBG, again, it's between 25 to 30%. We typically make 50 or more awards. In my experience, and I've been in this role for 5 years, I've seen award numbers between 50 to 60. So that's pretty much been the case. Being that we do have more funding this year, $22 million as opposed to last year, which was $18 million. I do suspect that we will have a few more awards. Perhaps, maybe on the high end of in that 50 to 60 range. What I will also say is that in previous years, we've also taken advantage of other funding from prior years that were still on the books to make additional awards. So what we try to do is we try to exhaust older funds from other appropriation years to make new awards, which allows NIFA to advance the reach of the program. So hopefully that's helpful. Thank you, Laverne. I appreciate your remarks. Thanks to all of you for your remarks. I'm reading through them. We appreciate your support of the program, as well as your flexibility with NIFA, with the transition to Kansas City, especially now during the COVID-19 pandemic. We are certainly privileged to be able to work with you. We will, consider to move things forward as we can. There was a question concerning the release of scores for proposals. I will say generally to everyone that typically we do not release the specific score for your application. So in other words, the scores are for NIFA only, okay? And those scores are maintained on file for NIFA staff only. When you receive your review packages, that includes your panel summary and individual reviews, typically those only include the comments, but they do not include the actual qualitative score, nor do they include the ranking of your proposal, okay? So that information, so this is an agency-wide policy. We do not release scores. We only release the comments for that proposal. Okay, I'm not seeing any additional questions. Again, if you do have any questions, and specifically if you're asking about your topic or maybe a resubmission that you're looking to resubmit, reach out to me directly and we can handle those one-on-one. If you have a question about any general questions about the RFA, you need to get a chance to ask it. Again, just send me an email and I can certainly reach out to you. I will send out a link for the recording once it's been made available. Again, I will send it out to the 1890 listservs. I would ask that all 1890 deans, research directors, and extension administrators, if you could go ahead and also help us by sending out that recording to your respective faculty and staff, and your officer-sponsored programs. That would be great, because that really helps us reach those individuals that would be interested in the information. And again, this webinar is only for FY 2020, while the RFA that's online is also for FY 2021. Just in case if there are any changes that might take place in the future, and if there's any situation, for example, if the RFA has to be reposted for that cycle, and at that point, it would be best to contact the program team, the new national program leader, as well as Stephanie for any information for FY 2021, once we are in FY 2021. But I can, for now, Stephanie and I can help you with FY 2020 questions, okay? Because the other thing is that we also do not know what the appropriations level is gonna be in FY 2021. Hopefully it will be either the same as we have or higher, but I can't speak to that. I can't confirm that. Once that information has been made available to us, I imagine that there will be communication from the agency that will let you know how much funds is available for the FY 2021 cycle. Okay. At this time, again, I don't see any new questions. I'm going to go ahead and say, just on behalf of the agency, Katrina, Stephanie, as well as our Dr. Suresh Warren, who is, many of you know, who he is the acting deputy director at NIFA, as well as an active advocate of the 1890s. We just want to thank you for your support. Thank you for your patience with us. I will certainly miss working with all of you. Katrina and I will miss working with all of you, but you will be in capable hands with a new national program leader, as well as working with Dr. Freeman. We will ensure a smooth transition. I wish you well. I wish you all the best, especially during this time of social distancing. Please continue to do all you can to advance the 1890 land grant mission. All of you are doing an outstanding job. I am proud of all the work that you do, and I'm excited for the applications that you're working on right now. So with that said, thanks again. I appreciate it very much. And I look forward to hearing from you in the near future. Take care of yourself. And until next time, please continue to utilize the resources on the web. Katrina provided several links within this chat for resources on the website. Please use those links for abstracts of funded projects. As well as if you're looking at industrial hemp, use those links and continue to read through the RFA if you need more information. So thank you very much. We will end the session now.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Aaron?